Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. Today we are going to be talking about the first three games of the series between the New York Rangers and the Florida Panthers. So this series so far has been, I would say, kind of the way we expected, right? I think, both teams split the first two games. I'm kind of expecting both teams to split the second two games. The reality is this is the type of series. Anybody going into the series that was like, oh, easy series, Rangers in 4 or 5, Panthers in 4 or 5. I think you guys were a little bit delusional. And we kind of saw that especially in the last series for the Rangers and the Panthers in the first round, really both rounds, in the sense that you don't beat teams easily, right? That fourth game is so difficult. And the fact that each of these games seems like we're further along in this series than we really are, because these teams are just so close in terms of how they match up against each other. So I will say for the Rangers, I think they've handled the adjustment of the Florida Panthers' speed really well. And this is not to discredit Carolina or Washington, but I don't think the Rangers' defense, they were much more aggressive in the first two rounds, and the transition game for the Hurricanes and the Capitals wasn't as quick as the Panthers. I mean, the way the Panthers break the puck out of their own zone, it's caught the Rangers off guard a couple times so far this series, even in Game 3. But it seems like the Rangers have adjusted to it better and had more of a counterattack to it. And that's been, I think, the most glaring difference from what I've seen in these games so far, is the Panthers' ability to break out of the zone really is the difference between some of these other teams that the Rangers have seen so far. And, for the Florida Panthers, this isn't really that concerning. I wouldn't really say, the Rangers continue their home ice advantage. Yes, they technically do. And Madison Square Garden is definitely a home ice advantage, but the difference for me when I look at this, the Panthers have been so good on the road. You look at their last their series against the Bruins, two of their three games in Florida, they lost. So I'm not going to get too caught up in that. It's different because the Panthers they don't have home ice advantage in this series, which some of you mentioned in my other videos, but the reality is it's one of those series. It's going to be a 6 or 7 game, overtime series clinching game. That's how this series is going to go. And it's funny because before Game 1, I predicted that the Rangers were going to win the game in overtime, and they didn't win Game 1 in overtime. I was just a little bit early to the party though, because in Games 2 and 3, my prediction technically kind of sort of would have been correct, but nonetheless, I'll admit I was right. I was just a little bit early. So now looking back, like I said, Game 1, the Panthers win Game 1. The Rangers return the favor in Game 2. I will say I don't like the officiating stuff, but we're going to get into it because that is a part of this series. Game 2, Barclay Goodrow, it was a high stick in the neutral zone, and the play should have been blown dead. But there's human error still in the game, and that is a non-reviewable call. So I think Barclay Goodrow it's a high stick, gives the puck to Trocheck, and it's kind of a give and go. So Trocheck immediately gives the puck back to Goodrow, who eventually scores the game winner in overtime for Game 2. And the thing is, what's weird about that call, and I understand the frustration, it's one of those calls, it doesn't matter. It's not a judgment call. It's on the official messing up. I think it's more just frustrating that, today we talk about how, inches of the ice in terms of whether it's offside or not, that's reviewable, but certain calls like that aren't reviewable. So I am more on the stance of make either everything reviewable or everything non-reviewable. And the fact that there's still gray area with things that are considered, you're allowed to review this play, but not that play, I don't really like that. I think if the NHL, and we get annoyed by it because it slows down the game and things like that, but if they're going to go into this direction where you're going to review inches of the ice for an offside, that's a call that is a blatant call that was missed. So that's not necessarily that I'm complaining on in terms of the Rangers got away with it. It's more so the rules of the NHL. I don't like the way that was put out there. And again, now it makes the referees look bad because you could clearly see it, but that's what happens. So either way, the Rangers win Game 2. They probably deserved to win Game 2. It was a tight game between both teams. And then Game 3 happens. 4-2 lead for the Rangers in the second period. I'm watching, I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here? The Panthers had a 4-minute power play. We're going to get back to that in a minute. A 4-minute power play, Barclay Goodrow gets a shorthanded goal. Like, it seemed like that whole second period, the Panthers were dominating the game. And even at the end of the first, right? Like, I think the shots were like 7-18 for the Panthers, but we were still tied at 2. And we're like, what is happening? Now, I will say, Sergei Bobrovsky did not have his best game. I think they showed a stat during the game. It was like, I don't think Bobrovsky's given up 3 goals in a single game in the last 7 games that he's played. So that's definitely something that we haven't seen from Bob in a while. And I don't expect it to be a trend for the rest of the series, but we'll see. So the Rangers come back, make it 4-2. Now we're going to the third period. Obviously, people on Twitter that might or might not be mentioned, right? You guys know who I'm talking about, kind of saying how the Rangers are going to shut the door and this and that. Well, you know, because the way you looked at it, I wasn't too surprised that the Panthers returned the favor and tied the game. Because the way the game was going, it just seemed like the type of game that the Panthers were meant to be in this game. And they weren't going to get the doors blown off of them. So they tied the game 4-4 going to overtime. And I will admit, I was at Texas Roadhouse when overtime happened, but it didn't seem like I missed much because the game ended very quickly. And the Rangers put in the game winner. And my oh my, what a game for Alexis Lafreniere. You know, I gave him a lot of criticism through the first 2 rounds. It seemed like he wasn't one of the guys that was really contributing the way you were hoping he would. But my God, I mean, he had 2 goals in Game 3, an unbelievable highlight reel goal in that game. And really impressive. And same thing for Barclay Goodrow. I think he scored the game winner in Game 2, and he scored another goal in Game 4, right? Or in Game 3, the shorthanded goal in the second period. So it's one of those things where, like, some of the guys you're not expecting to see getting on the board are. And that's the difference for the Rangers. That's what I was worried about going into this series. Were we going to see enough of the Rangers' depth contributing? Because during the first 2 rounds, they just didn't seem like they were completely in it. They were relying a lot on Panarin. But now the shift has kind of shifted the other way again, where a guy like Mika Zibanejad, where has he been in this series? He's been very quiet. I don't think he's registered a point yet this series. So that's the kind of stuff where the Rangers, you're thinking to yourself, you'd like to see a little bit more there. Now let's get to the Trouba hit, because this is the most controversial thing of the series so far. I am not a fan of that hit. I understand that he didn't actually hit Evan Rodriguez's head. But if we're going to go off the rule off of intent, based off the rule in terms of intention, that is a full-on, you know the definition, chicken wing. His chicken wing was literally out. He clearly missed his body positioning on Evan Rodriguez, so he clearly sticks out his elbow. Now, if the clearly sticking out his elbow, and in slow-mo you can clearly see it bright as day, and the fact of the history of Jacob Trouba, I would be shocked if he was suspended. And you might be wondering, Kevin, why are you saying that? He should be suspended, right? Should be the opposite. The NHL is going to take this one of 2 directions. Either they're going to admit that they were wrong and give him the suspension, or stick to their guns, stick to the officials in the review room and say, well, based off what they reviewed on the ice, this technically shouldn't be, if it's not worthy of a 5-minute major, which we reviewed, well, then we can't go and say it's a suspension. And I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope they do suspend him. The NHL admits they were wrong with the call. I just don't know if that's the direction they're going to actually go. We're probably going to find out here later today before going into Game 4 tomorrow. But it's very interesting. I'd love to know what you guys think of that Trouba hit. I know Ranger fans will try to stick up for him, but I think enough Ranger fans are kind of sick of most of the Trouba stuff. You know, he hasn't been very good through the playoffs this year. He seems like he's causing more distraction than anything. And everybody expected it to be Rempe. It's not Rempe, it's Trouba. And, I just don't think they need that right now. I think the Rangers, honestly, would be better off if he wasn't on the ice. And I think a lot of Ranger fans would make that argument. Yeah, suspend him for 2 games because we don't want him on the ice, So, I'd love to know what you guys think, though. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think is going to happen the rest of this series? Now that I've kind of gone through the informative part, I'd like to give my opinions. Like I said, the Trouba thing, I think I've made that point pretty clear already. In terms of how this series is going to go, like I said, this is going to be a back-and-forth series. I think the Panthers evened it up at 2 apiece heading back to Madison Square Garden for Game 5. I think it's going to be up in the air between 5 and 6 who takes either of those games. I think this series deserves to and is destined for a 7-game series. I will admit, though, the goaltending has been pretty disappointing, especially in Game 3. You know, you were expecting either Shesterkin or Bobrovsky to lock it down, and neither of them really did. And, you know, Shesterkin played really well in Game 2, and is a huge reason they won Game 2. But for Game 3 last night, you really were hoping for him to continue that, and it just didn't happen. I'll give credit where it's due to the Panthers. They played really well. They were finding ways to get pucks into the net. You know, Barkov has had some incredible chances. You know, even going back to Game 2, right? They probably should have won Game 2 even with the chances Barkov had, but that's just how the game goes, right? It's a game of inches and posts and goals and non-goals and offside and high sticking. At the end of the day, all of it comes to a 4-2, 4-3, 4-1 series victory, and that's kind of how it goes. So I'd love to know what you guys think down below. What do you guys think of this series so far? Let me know your predictions. Now that we're 3 games into the series, I'd love to know what you guys think now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Peace out, guys.